and welcome to the week that was. To help us appreciate the political stories of the week, I now have Advocate James Mamboleo, we have political analyst Mark Bichachi, and Moses Oburu. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning, and I sure do hope that you've had yourselves a good week. And let's dig right in, and of course what's on many of the headlines and social media is that trip that was made by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga to visit the former President Daniel Arap Moi. And there's all sorts of narratives as to what that might be all about. Let me start with you, Moses Oburu, on your thoughts and possibly maybe your analysis of that particular meeting.
Well, you know, Moi is a former president, a man who ruled Kenya for 24 years. Definitely that 24 years had tremendous impact on Kenya and the lives of Kenyans. The decisions he made, the things they perceived to have been done wrong, the things that he did right, all impacted Kenya. And therefore, he's a man, he's an elder statesman. We know he's old, he's a man in his 90s. He's been unwell lately. And Raila Odinga, his former Prime Minister, worked with Moi as Secretary General of KANU. So
so you think there's nothing politically?
I mean, this is just I think everything in Kenya, whether visit, handshakes, all carry political undertones. So seeing his son Gideon Moi, who is senator, a man rumored to have and has pronounced himself on this, to have political ambitions, has political undertones. But I don't think Moi in his state, because like I understand, his attention span in a day is now like 2 hours. I don't think there's not much President Moi, former President Moi, can add to the former Prime Minister as a political strategy or tact or that.
Almost a month after that.
So perception, yes. Kenyans will perceive this interpret it in different ways. So I know it's going to elucidate so much discussion.
Talk and discussion.
Yes.
All right, Mamboleo, your thoughts on that, and could there be a strategy that's playing right there?
Quintessential Raila Odinga, very quick to change when he needs to change. I think, you know, for some time, Raila Odinga was cutting himself out as this elder statesman, especially towards the run-up towards the 2013 presidential elections. Because Raila Odinga is known as this combative, extremely aggressive politician, and you know that is not so good for any person running for the office of President of the Republic of Kenya. So I think after a hotly contested election and the aftermath, we've seen Raila Odinga shaking hands with the President Uhuru Kenyatta. You can never tell, because Raila Odinga has not told us yet whether he's going to run for president in 2022 or not. I think what he's trying to do is try to cut himself out as this fellow who is not the kind of fellow that people think he is, you know, that he can actually compromise, even with people that he has fought very hard before. And I think his visit to President Moi, other than being, of course, a visit to say a word of pole to Mzee who has been ailing, means a lot politically. He could be trying to cut himself out as a person who is willing to work with the Kalenjin nation. Mm-hmm. And that would mean a lot, especially in the coming days, since we know that two prominent sons of that nation are actually aspiring for the office of President of the Republic of Kenya. Mm-hmm. Gideon Moi, former President Moi's son, is definitely angling to become president, as far as I can remember. And we know, of course, Deputy President William Ruto, on the other side, is also willing to throw his hat in the ring for the office of President of the Republic of Kenya. And so now, not so clear whether Raila Odinga is going to run or not. Either he's going there to tell President Moi that, you know, we can work in the coming days together with probably your son, or that, you know, if I choose to run in 2022, is it possible to tell Gideon, who is fairly younger than me, to hold his horses?
Okay. Mark Bichachi, your thoughts on that, and also the fact that, well, there are those who feel that there could be some angling from Raila in terms of support for Gideon Moi as opposed to William Ruto.
You know, it's only in Kenya where if you go visit a sick person, it must become political. The retired president had a medical condition and Raila went to visit. So we must consider first and foremost that it was just a visit. That's one. But being Kenya, let's indulge in the political undertones of the day and consider who comes out as the winner of this particular conversation. The winner of this conversation is by far, by a mile, Raila Odinga, because what has he done? He's been able to bridge the gap between himself and Uhuru Kenyatta. He's bridged the gap now between himself and the perceived tension between him and the Mois. And the only enemies he seems to have today are Mudavadi, Kalonzo, and Wetangula, who are tadpoles in an ocean full of whales. And as such, Raila's political acumen from this movement alone is significantly increased. But the reason of this increase has multiple facets. Number one, is he positioning himself to be an Africa-wide statesman? We've had a word that he wants to be in the African Union, recognized as like the likes of Thabo Mbeki and stuff like that. And these are people who've retired from politics. So he's showing one angle where he's possibly retiring from politics. But with such movements, then you can consider that maybe he wants to be a kingmaker. Maybe that's what he's angling for, so that his word may become what spurs someone to victory. The second angle, of course, is Raila Odinga run in 2022. Is it possible for him to run? Yes, we have no age limit. And the truth of the matter is, with the departure of President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila might stand the best chance of winning yet. And those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the only answer can come 2022, around February and between February and April, when we're registering political candidates,
presidential
then
candidates,
we would know
Moses,
what is real.
A slight departure from what my brothers here have just stated as being. I see this visit following the handshake as and I'm told that Raila Odinga's visas to the UK was cancelled after the swearing in on 30th of January. You know, the envoys, the Americans, the British told him, please don't swear. And he went ahead to swear in himself in. Following that, they cancelled his visas, I'm told, to the States and to America. I know these are the real shareholders of Kenya. I know the Mois and the Kenyattas are the local. I
didn't know we had shareholders,
of course,
across the shore.
Yeah, that's why decisions that's why Kenya moves in a particular direction. And I told you last time here that the Kenyan president, the man who ultimately becomes Kenyan president, is not elected by Kenyans. It is decided in the boardrooms of Washington and London.
And how do you qualify that? Because those are very strong allegations you're making there. How do you qualify that?
The ballot box
would like to
also
believe that
in the UK?
Would like to believe that we are Kenyans who vote for our president. How is it decided elsewhere?
You know how controversial our announcement and pronouncement of the votes in this country has been, particularly in 2007. You know, Raila Odinga won with his ODM. You know, what happened, the bungling of the vote, and ultimately you had a man like President Bush in America pronounce himself on it, that one will have to be president and one will have to be prime minister. And shortly there was a process that led to that. And you know, we've seen other countries around us that go in that direction. And America and Britain never come in.
All right, so, yes. So what's your point?
My point is that Raila Odinga is trying to make amends so that he gets into the good books with the superpowers and get his political path back on the right track. Mm-hmm. Probably to run again in 2022, like it's been hinted.
Okay.
That is as long a shot as you can get. I think Moses Uhuru is over-psychologizing the idea.
He's become a conspiracy theorist.
that the African nation is predominantly controlled by Western interests. Of course, we know that Western countries have tremendous influence on our political, economic, and social circles. But we cannot say that Western countries elect for us the president. Western countries will look around and see if there is any of the candidates who offers themselves that they can work with, of course, but they do not directly come here to elect the president for us. But I know where he's coming from. I will tell you very shortly. However, this is what I think is important. Raila Odinga is a very brilliant political animal, and he's extremely practical. And I think for his supporters, they should now see a man who's settled to that realization that 2017 is now gone, okay? But he doesn't want to go down the annals of history as a man who fought so hard, created so much trouble during an election, and then that's it. He probably wants now to reshape himself to look like the kind of fellow that you can trust going into the future, so that in whichever capacity he might choose to operate, whether he runs for president or he chooses to play the elder statesman and become Kenya's roaming ambassador to every part of the globe that you can imagine, you need to put a man in that position who people look at and they think, now this is a mature fellow who's been through the entire political process and he has tentacles across the country, across the world. He's a person that you can trust to probably move a certain agenda. I think that visit to good old President Moi's home was in that process of trying to reach out to people that you have competed against very, very adversely and telling them, that was just competition, guys. This is now past us. We have a country to move forward, and I am willing to work with you. So what happens thereafter or hereafter, political events will continue happening. We cannot predetermine for sure that this is going to be the effect of such kind of maneuvers. But you can see that this is a gentleman who is generally trying to go on a charm offensive to create himself as a safe pair of hands that Kenyans can actually
And I guess, like you said, Mark, he probably comes out as the biggest winner, and not just on his party or coalition level, but even for the country.
Yeah.
It's a man who is positioning himself to earn yet again, the trust of the people.
Yes. And one of the most critical things we must understand, as Momboleo has correctly put it, Raila can be both a very good peacemaker and a very horrible troublemaker. And whenever Raila tappers down and begins to reach across the divide, what happens in this country is you see economic growth, you see confidence in our systems, you see a lot more progression whenever Raila takes this stone. And one of the things that is advantageous to him and to the nation is the fact that now he's opening up doors that he can become whatever he wants come 2022. In fact, next year, if he decides to be a roaming ambassador, we will say yes. If he decides to say that he's he's strengthening ODM party and reaching across the country, many parts of this country will open their doors to him and say, you know what, you are our statesman, karibu. And this is the reality today. If he goes to Kiambu, he will not be booed the way he was booed in October. So this is the reality. This is PR and political games at par excellence, and that's the reality. But the question of whether he'll run in 2022 is not cast in stone yet. He has options. And one of those options, by the way, could be, why don't you remain as the leader of ODM and make sure that ODM as a party has majority in parliament and senate and has the president? You still have the backroom power. So basically what Raila has today is a check written by the Republic of Kenya, and the amount is left blank. He can fill it the way he wants.
All right, and maybe coming to you, Moses Uhuru, in terms of where does that leave NASA or the opposition per se? I had some leaders here yesterday, one of them being the deputy party leader for ANC, and they still maintain that NASA is alive, despite the fact that many have written the obituary, some have possibly even attended the funeral and buried it. Your thoughts?
I haven't seen any of the NASA leaders, including Honorable Raila Odinga himself,
pronounce its death.
advertise the obituary the NASA obituary.
But do we have to wait for them to announce for us to know that it's no longer there? I mean, where is Moses Wetangula and where is Musalia Mudavadi?
My brother, this is Kenya, and you've got me off guard, but I wanted to also add that you see the visits to Honorable Raila Odinga by the Jubilee side of by the Jubilee party has been the TNA side of the coalition. You know, the Jubilee is a coalition of TNA and URP.
Jubilee is a party, it's not a coalition.
Listen, my brother, be realistic. The TNA wing has been more consistent and frequent visiting Raila Odinga. And you see Raila Odinga visiting Moi. It can't be lost on Kenyans that there's emerging a fear from the system of the possibility of a route of presidency. So we could read more on this, that these guys could be ganging up as the oligarchs to try and prevent this abrasive man who has shown that nothing can stop him from being the president of Kenya by maybe ganging up and trying to coalesce support. Yeah, I may be wrong, but let's Kenyans see, because I've not seen Ruto as a deputy president ever visit President Moi, former President Moi. President Uhuru has been there, the mother has been there. So let's watch what happens.
Let's watch and see. Mamboleo, do you think this now basically needs for the opposition to go back to the drawing board?
As we speak, I am in that difficult position where you find yourself between a rock and a hard place to determine whether there is actually in existence right now an opposition to the Republic of Kenya. Why? Because opposition in the...
All right, sorry, Mamboleo, I understand there is a slight challenge there on the microphone. And earlier on, I think you had asked whether Mark didn't want you to speak, but it looks like... but Mark, in regards to the opposition, do they need to go back to the drawing board? Because evidently, as much as Uhuru maybe is evasive as to whether NASA is alive or not, it looks like definitely there needs to be a conversation for the opposition.
The stench from the rotten corpse that is NASA is apparent to everyone. It would be an act of futility to deny the death of NASA, given the statements even by Wetangula himself when he said the divorce will be messy and loud. Unfortunately, he did not read the prenuptial agreement, which did not entitle him to any inheritance upon divorce. The reality is NASA is dead, and we have to wake up to that reality. And I must praise Kalonzo Musyoka for having seen it and actually decided to launch a national party. Because one of the things that killed NASA is because Wetangula's party reads like a cousins meeting. You know, Wekesa, Nyongesa, Wetangula, Wepuhulu, you know, that's it. That can't be a national political party. And Kalonzo's used to be the same. Mutua, Makau, you know, Kalonzo. It can't be. We must begin to have national parties. And I think what Raila Odinga has realized critically is the Pentagon formation does not work anymore. And that's why it's critical for him and why he's on an outright offensive to strengthen ODM. And why is he strengthening ODM? Because he's learned from Jubilee that if you strengthen a political party, then you're most likely able to pull in votes from all over the country, which is what Jubilee did. And what we need going into 2022 is stronger political parties. So will Kalonzo Musyoka's new movement for Kenya actually make it? We don't know, but that's what you need. But NASA, for all intents and purposes, is dead. It would be unfair to lie to the Kenyan people. And that's how the cookie has crumbled.
That's how the cookie has crumbled.
That's how it is.
All right, Mamboleo, sorry, we cut you short. You were saying something about...
Yes, I was saying that in Kenya today, Raila Odinga is the opposition, and the opposition is Raila Odinga. So these other three musketeers that we call Kalonzo, Musyoka, Moses Wetangula, and Musalia Mudavadi are kids that Raila Odinga has been carrying along in the hope that he might acquire a national perspective. He might acquire a national impression when he actually had a national impression to begin with. I have said ad nauseum that Raila Odinga needs just to walk into Western and he will pick all the votes that he needed to pick. He will not lose any vote just because Moses Wetangula or Musalia Mudavadi are not on his side. And so what you are seeing is what was going to happen anyway. You know, a realization by Raila Odinga that I cannot let these young fellows continue hanging on my coattails when they deliver absolutely no political capital. And there's something extremely important, Mike, that we must tell Kenyans, that, you know, Raila Odinga has toiled for many years. I've been one of his biggest bashers, especially in the last year. But we must accept something. That gentleman has made a contribution that you cannot ignore in this country. And he has toiled through many years and risen to where he is right now. You know, so that so much so that now you can call him an enigma of Kenyan politics. Now, when you acquire that kind of political capital, you cannot lend it to anybody for free. Political capital is not given like that. So Moses Wetangula, Musalia Mudavadi think that Raila now can say, okay, this is political capital I have acquired over the years.
Let me hand it
I am now going to hand it over to you. It doesn't work like that. Look at the operations of Parliament. Look at defending NASA outside Parliament. We can see serious fellows like James Orengo who have played an important role. Where has Moses Wetangula been? You know, Moses Wetangula is a man who was elevated to the level of principal, when in actual fact he was not supposed to even be assistant teacher. Okay, so this man
have harsh words for
so this man after the 2013 election becomes the leader of minority in Parliament, having brought nothing to Parliament, to Senate. Now he wants to ride on the same ebb and become leader of minority in a Senate in which he is the only senator in his party, okay? It doesn't work like that. If he was a real principal, he should be out here like the other principals. He should not be in the Senate looking for perks within the offices of Parliament and so on and so forth. But of importance, this is, I think, what is important. It is important to note today, and I'm sure we will be vindicated much later, that the only two big players right now, in as far as the Kenyan presidency is concerned, 2022, are William Ruto and Raila Odinga, okay? If Raila Odinga chooses to shelve his ambition to become president, he can become a kingmaker. We don't even need to have an election in 2022, because probably William Ruto will become president automatically. So in that context, I'm sure William Ruto is doing his mathematics and Raila Odinga is doing his mathematics, and both of them, being very good political chess players, are going to give us some way forward. Gideon used to look like he had a promise, but I'm sure even his father isn't very happy right now, because I don't think his star has shone very well in as far as that high office of the office of president is concerned. So we hope, probably, unless something is in the offing, unless Raila Odinga has gone to tell Daddy that, you know, I can support your son, I don't see any other person coming in.
For you right now, it's Raila Odinga and William Samoei Ruto for 2022 in the way the political landscape is as it is?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want us now to look at something else, and that is the IEBC and what has been going on, because come 2022, we hope we're not going to be still talking about a body that is not able to midwife. And let me start with you, Uhuru, on your thoughts on what has been going on. Evidently, there is trouble in that camp, and there are those who feel that Chebukati has basically outlived his time. It's time for him to go.
Overtly, we are told that it's procurement deals that are bringing issues at IBC. Rightly, we know that every managerial decision in this country, development or otherwise, is driven by procurement considerations, and money-making deals. So that could be true. But far from it, we know that there's a lot of politics that goes on around IBC. This is the body that is mandated to conduct and announce itself on who wins the presidency and any other elective office in Kenya. So these fellows have done their bit. They were hired to do a particular job, and I think the system is finished with them. So it is time for them to be
Done away with?
To be done away with.
Do we disband IEBC, or
I mean,
do we change the leadership?
IEBC remains, but the fellows who run IEBC must be changed for 2022 for many reasons that will be clear as time goes.
But we don't seem to be solving the problem, because how many times are we going to change the drivers or the leaders?
That is the question. That's the question now. As a country, that's the question now. We need to sit down as a country and then decide that maybe if there are statutes that are wrong, lawyer Mambale is here, maybe he'll tell us we need to change certain laws that are weak, you know, in the management and the running of IBC. But otherwise, politically, I think they've done their job.
Mamboleo, your thoughts on what we need to do, because it seems like we shall change leadership at the IEBC for as long as we have elections.
I am not a tribalist, but sometimes, you know, I want to send my friend Mark Bichachi here to the Luya nation, more particularly the Bukusu nation. I do not understand how two fully grown Bukusu men cannot run an organization quietly, a small organization like the IEBC. So, Mark, be very careful, because next time you ask us for a political position, we might not give you. But this is the thing. I was privileged to be the rapporteur for the Parliamentary Select Committee that overhauled the IEBC in 2016. And my short take on that process is that the problem that ails IEBC has nothing to do with either inadequate legislation or lack of laws. It is something else, that political competition, especially at the presidential level, is so stiff, and it is so important for the stakeholders that the IEBC, one way or the other, is going to become a problem depending on who is on either side. So what you see there is political power broking of the type that is going to be seen as we head towards 2022. However, I think, in my view, I think both gentlemen are not behaving properly. And I think it is time that Chiloba stops running to courts to get the commissioners to get... he cannot develop confidence in the commission by going to court, you know? If the commission seems so hell-bent on removing him, I think it's high time that he decided that, I mean, just like Mamboleo, who does private practice out here and earns a meager and ekes a living in a hard manner to bring up a family, he can also come out here and establish a kiosk and run it, just like everybody else. But at the same time, I do not think that the way the IEBC Commission has handled itself, especially the chairman, that they have any higher moral standing to want to oust Chiloba than the moral standing that Chiloba has to continue serving there. I think Chairman Chebukati, a man of many years of experience as a lawyer and a professional, must get to that realization that he was given a job that he cannot do, okay? Because if you cannot even whip the commissioners together to agree on anything, okay, then you must accept that this thing is too hard for you to run. And give way just like all noble gentlemen do, so that we get other gentlemen or ladies who can actually run the IEBC. I think we need now a lady, probably chair of the IEBC, and a CEO lady to run that organization.
All right, Mark.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. That's one. In any organization, whether you've got 2 employees or 50, if the chairman of your board and the CEO cannot agree, that organization cannot move. That is basic administration. It's basic. And on that level alone, the level of incompetence exhibited by both parties is quite astronomical. But at the same time, in the game of political machinations and movements, you must apply the rules of Al Capone, that if the FBI begins to look for you, you shoot your bookie, you shoot the guy who keeps your books. And that's the reason why we will always have issues with the IEBC. Because if I'm going to use you in any way, whether I was running for MP or I was running for senator, whatever it is I was running, when I discover that I could get you not to sign a document, not to transfer a document, immediately I take the throne, you become my biggest enemy. And the reality of the matter is, both Chebukati and Chiloba have spent their political capital. Whoever their political minders may be, they've spent that capital. And it is time to shoot the bookie. Now, our hope is while we're shooting this bookie, we can get proper accountants who can, number one, agree on how to run a very basic organization whose entire role is the ability to count 1 + 1. We need to agree as a nation that we need to take the next 4 years. In fact, this is the reason why I'd say that. Take the next 4 years to not only purge the IEBC, but to make sure that we have a system within the IEBC that it has the confidence of every single Kenyan. Using the IEBC as an extension of a political party is a very dangerous thing for the nation. And that's what we need to fix. So my conclusion on this is if the two cannot agree, then the center is already falling apart.
It's already falling apart.
Only a matter of time. So basic governance would tell you that a divorce is imminent.
Okay, and it's time up now for us. So let me get your closing comments, Uhuru, your closing comments on what's happening politically and possibly your advice to Kenyans on what we should expect.
Kenyans must, by choice and design, remain united and focused on the goals of working hard and getting bread on their table, taking fees, paying fees for their children, getting some money to pay fees for their children. It is clear that this country, the political elite, has its competitions when it's time for competition, and then they close ranks. They're not enemies, as you've clearly seen. Uhuru shaking hands with Raila Raila visiting Moi, and the other parties visiting each other. So I would add my voice to the quest for unity and national cohesion, and that Kenyans in whatever places we live, we work, let us work with one voice and remain united.
All right, Mambole, your closing comments.
In 2003, when the NAC government ascended to power, they realized very quickly that 80% of the rural population is employed in agriculture, and they created something that was called the ERSP, the Economic Recovery Strategy paper of 2003, which gave birth to the strategy for revitalizing agriculture. They also realized that we needed quickly financial intermediation. That is how you've seen Kenyan-made banks grow so quickly within a very short period of time. That is how you have seen technology-based firms like Safaricom grow so quickly. Because at the end of the day, government is this big facilitator for a conducive environment for economic and social growth. No one should lie to any Kenyan that because your kinsman is not president, that you cannot thrive. Of course, I know many Kenyans know today that they have never reached any position in their life where the president needed to sign for them anything, okay? In fact, your local area chief is more important to you than the president of the Republic of Kenya, because there are things he can do for you at that particular level. So what I need to tell this government, which I think is properly formed, is the time for playing politics is now over. Get down to creating that environment that we require to attract foreign direct investment, to boost trade, to create an economy that is sustainable, eliminate all forms of corruption, and make sure our school system is working, our health system is working, and on the other side, let all Kenyans be law-abiding citizens and work hard and earn what they deserve. Let them not expect free goodies from anyone, because there are no free goodies that are going to come from anyone.
All right, very briefly, Mark.
The best news for Kenyans today is come 2022, politicians will no longer promise you roads or healthcare or education, because that will be done. We are living in a most excellent time in our history. However, my question becomes is, with these roads and these highways and this health, who is the citizen 2030? And the citizen 2030, based on the trends last night on Twitter, Ifikie Wazazi, is in serious jeopardy. And let me tell parents in this country, the problem is not your teenagers. The problem is you drop your child at school at 6 a.m. and then the driver picks her up at 7 p.m. and he's brought up between teachers who, by the way, there's no class called morality in school, and number two, their second teacher is Nicki Minaj. Do not be surprised when you only donated genes and never parented your child if they behave like Nicki Minaj. That's their mother. So don't be surprised.
Vera Sidika for that matter.
Yes.
Well, we're going to wind up right there, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's Mark Bichachi, Moses Uhuru, and James Mamboleo. That's the week that was. And, well, for now, we are going to take a break, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. In the next segment of the show, it's going to be Matters Entertainment and Entertainment News, all coming up right here. So we take that break. We'll be right back.